The general went out to find that none of his soldiers were there. One finally ran up, panting heavily. "Sorry, sir, I can explain. You see, I had a date and it ran a little late. I ran to the bus but missed it. I hailed a cab, but it broke down. Found a farm. Bought a horse, but it dropped dead. Ran 10 miles. And now I'm here." The general was very skeptical about this explanation, but at least he was here, so he let the soldier go. Moments late, 8 more soldiers came up to the general panting. He asked them why they were late. "Sorry, sir. I had a date and it ran a little late. I ran to the bus but missed it. I hailed a cab, but it broke down. Found a farm. Bought a horse, but it dropped dead. Ran 10 miles. And now I'm here." The general eyed them, feeling very skeptical, but since he let the first guy go, he let them go too. A 9th soldier jogged up to the general, panting heavily. "Sorry, sir. I had a date, and it ran a little late. I ran to the bus, but missed it. I hailed a cab, but—" "Let me guess," the general interrupted. "It broke down." "No," said the soldier. "There were so many dead horses in the road. It took forever to get around them." 1. Teacher asks their class of children to come up with a sentence beginning with I. After a few children come to the front with predictable statements about having a cat or a certain toy, a child steps up and says "I is," and is immediately interrupted by the teacher. "I am." She side-eyes the teacher, frowns, and ignores her teacher, starting again. "I is," again. The teacher interrupts her, this time a little more snappily. "It's I am! Use the proper word!" The girl turns to look at her this time, eyelids drooped with exasperation. "Fine," she sighs. "I am the 9th letter of the alphabet. 2. A gynecologist had become fed up with malpractice insurance and HMO paperwork and was burned out. Hoping to try another career where skillful hands would be beneficial, he decided to become a mechanic. He went to the local technical college, signed up for evening classes, attended diligently, and learned all he could. When the time of the practical exam approached, the gynecologist prepared carefully for weeks and completed the exam with tremendous skill. When the results came back, he was surprised to find that he had obtained a score of 150%. Fearing an error, he called the instructor, saying, "I don't want to appear ungrateful for such an outstanding result, but I wonder if there is an error in the grade." The instructor said, "During the exam, you took the engine apart perfectly, which was worth 50% of the total mark. You put the engine back together again perfectly, which is also worth 50% of the mark." After a pause, the instructor added, "I gave you an extra 50% because you did it all through the muffler, which I've never seen done in my entire career." 3. 2 college students accidentally miss the math final exam. The next day, they both went to plead with their professor. He was feeling pretty good that day, so he allowed them to retake it. He told them to both come back tomorrow for an oral exam. When they both showed up, he told one of them to wait outside while he tests the other. So one enters and the other puts his ear to the door to listen. The professor begins asking the question, "You are riding in a train car and you get too hot. What do you do?" The student replies, "I open the window." "Okay, now that window is 2 feet wide and 3 feet high. The train is traveling 50 km going north, and the wind is blowing at 15 km due east. How long will it take for new air to replace the old air in the car? The student is clearly confused at this difficult question and just answers, I don't know. So the professor gives him an F, dismisses him, and calls in his friend. He begins asking his friend, You are riding in a train car and it gets too hot. What do? He says, I will take my jacket off. Okay, but it's still too hot. What do? I take my shirt off. I understand, but it's very, very hot. I will just get naked. Okay, but there are people in the car who will see you get naked. With all respect, Professor, said the student, I don't care if my grandmother and my priest are there. There's no way I'm opening that darn window. 4. A father, mother and child went out to spend time on the beach on a hot summer's day. But as soon as they reached the beach, they discovered that there was a black flag there, a sign not to enter the water. The boy really wanted to get in the water, but his mother did not agree, and they stayed on the beach to rest in the sun and play in the sand. After a few minutes, the father got bored and turned to his wife. Keep an eye on the boy. I'm going into the water. There's no way the sea is really that dangerous. After a few minutes, the boy asked, Mom, why did you let Dad get in the water and not me? Because you and Father are two different people, and there are things he can do and you can't, answered the mother. Is it because Dad knows how to swim really well? Continued the boy. Not really, answered the mother. Is it because Dad is big and strong? No. Then why is Daddy allowed to enter the water and I'm not? The boy complained. Because Daddy has life insurance. 5. A little girl wants to take her dog for a walk, so she asks her mother whether she can take Lulu for a walk around the block. Her mother says, No, sweetie, Lulu is in heat. What does that mean? Asks the girl. Why don't you go and ask your dad in the garage? Says the busy mother. So the girl goes to her father in the garage and asks, I want to take Lulu for a walk, but Mom says she's in heat and to ask you about it. The father takes a rag, pours some petrol on it, and then rubs Lulu's backside with it to disguise the scent. Now you can take her for a walk, he says. Just don't let her off the leash, and she'll be fine. So the little girl skips happily away, with Lula trotting along beside her. A few minutes later, she returns with an empty leash, and no Lulu. Concerned, her dad asked, Where's Lulu, sweetie? She ran out of gas halfway around the block, the girl replied. So the neighbor's dog is giving her a push home. 6. In a small Italian town, hundreds of years ago, a small business owner owed a large sum of money to a loan shark. The loan shark was a very old, unattractive-looking guy that just so happened to fancy the business owner's daughter. He decided to offer the businessman a deal that would completely wipe out the debt he owed him. However, the catch was that we would only wipe out the debt if he could marry the businessman's daughter. Needless to say, this proposal was met with a look of disgust. The loan shark said that he would place 2 pebbles into a bag, one white and one black. The daughter would then have to reach into the bag and pick out a pebble. If it was black, the debt would be wiped, but the loan shark would then marry her. If it was white, the debt would also be wiped, but the daughter wouldn't have to marry the loan shark. Standing on a pebble-strewn path in the businessman's garden, the loan shark bent over and picked up 2 pebbles. Whilst he was picking them up, the daughter noticed that he'd picked up 2 black pebbles and placed them both into the bag. He then asked the daughter to reach into the bag and pick one. The daughter naturally had 3 choices as to what she could have done. Refuse to pick a pebble from the bag. Take both pebbles out of the bag and expose the loan shark for cheating. Pick a pebble from the bag, fully well knowing it was black, and sacrifice herself for her father's freedom. She drew out a pebble from the bag, and before looking at it, accidentally dropped it into the midst of the other pebbles. She said to the loan shark, "Oh, how clumsy of me! Never mind, if you look into the bag for the one that is left, you will be able to tell which pebble I picked." The pebble left in the bag is obviously black, and seeing as the loan shark didn't want to be exposed, he had to play along as if the pebble the daughter dropped was white and clear her father's debt. Moral of the story: it's always possible to overcome a tough situation through out-of-the-box thinking, and not give in to the only options you think you have to pick from. 7. A stockbroker walks past a kid selling lemonade. "Hey, mister, you want some lemonade?" a little girl calls to him. The stockbroker is just getting out of his brand new BMW in a nice tailored suit. He was about to walk past when he a double take at the sign that says Lemonade 50. "Your sign is wrong, kid. I think you mean 50 cents. The little girl shakes her head. "Nope, $50, mister. I need the money for space camp." The stockbroker paused for a minute because he appreciates a good hustle, but clearly this kid is going about it the wrong way. "Look, sweetie, I know you're trying to make money, but you have to charge what people are willing to pay. No one is going to pay that much for a tiny cup of lemonade. Now, what do you think is a fair price?" The little girl beams and says, $50, mister." The stockbroker gives a little sigh and shakes his head. "Okay, I'm gonna pass. You see, you can't make a profit when no one pay your price. Now, do you have anything else for sale?" "Homemade brownies, 50 cents. The stockbroker winces in frustration. "Okay, look, I studied economics at Harvard, and I got my MBA from Wharton, so I'm going to teach you a little about business, okay? Now, each of your little cups of lemonade probably costs you about 50 cents, including the margin cost of your stand." He takes out $1. "I'll pay you 10 times that much because I want to help you understand about markup." The little girl shakes her head and smiles. "No thanks, mister. $50, please." "You know what? I give up. Take this $1, and I'm going to buy 2 of your brownies. I know you're losing money on them, and I'm not going to buy a single cup of your overpriced lemonade. I'm trying to be nice and teach you about business, but I guess this is the only way for you to learn a lesson." "Okay." The girl takes the $1 and puts 10 brownies on a plate. Just to make the point, the stockbroker decides to eat one of the brownies right in front of her. Suddenly, he begins coughing and gagging uncontrollably. "Oh my God, what did you put in these?" She grins happily and says, "It's my special recipe. Eggs, flour, butter, cocoa, sawdust, and goat pellets. This is horrible. I have to get this taste out of my mouth." The little girl takes out a jar full of $50 bills, cocks her head to the side, and says through a beaming grin, "You want some lemonade?" 8. A biology student doing his thesis on wasps is walking down the street when he passes a record store. In the window, he sees a record called Wasps of the World and the sounds they make. Intrigued, he walks into the store. He says to the shopkeeper, "I'll have that wasp record in the window, please. I've been listening to so many wasps, I'll probably be able to know each and every one of them." He smiles smugly as the shopkeeper feigns interest. The student pays and leaves. When he gets home, he puts the record on. Bzzz, it goes, but the man is stumped. He doesn't know what type of wasp this is. He waits for the next track. Bzzz, and again. He can't identify which species of wasp this is. It gets to the 5th track, and he breaks down. He can't identify a single wasp, yet he thought he was already an expert on the subject. He calls his professor round to the house to help. When he arrives, he explains to him, "I thought I was an expert by now, but I can't identify a single wasp on this whole record," he says, almost in tears. The old professor ponders for a minute as he looks at the record. I know what the problem is," he says. "What? What is it?" "You've got it on the B side." 9. A woman is riding the bus while trying to breastfeed her baby. The baby, however, isn't interested. After several tries, the mother is quite angry. "Drink the milk, or I'll give it all to the man sitting at the back," she says. The baby is still playing around. A few minutes later, she tries again. "Drink the milk, or I'll really give it all to the man at the back, and you'll go hungry." The baby continues rejecting her. She tries again, very angry this time. "I'm definitely going to give it all to the man at the back if you don't behave." This goes on a few more times. Suddenly, she hears a voice from the back of the bus. "Lady, will you please make up your mind? I was supposed to get off 5 stops ago." 10. A retired man purchased a home near a high school. He spent the first few weeks of his retirement in peace. Then the new school year began. One afternoon early into the first semester, a group of loud young boys came down his street, beating merrily on every bin they came across. They then did so the following day and the day after that, until finally the retiree decided it was time to take some action. The next afternoon, he walked out to meet the boys as they banged their way down the street. Stopping them, he said, "You kids are a lot of fun. I used to do the same thing when I was your age. Will you do me a favor? I'll give you each $1 if you'll promise to come around every day and do your thing." The boys were more than happy and continued to bang on the bins every day on their walk home. After a week, the old man walked out and greeted the kids again. However, this time, he didn't have a smile on his face. "This recession's really putting a big dent in my income," he told them. "I'm going to have to cut it down to 50 C a day to keep you kids banging the bins." The kids were obviously unimpressed, but they accepted the reduction in payment and continued their afternoon activities. A few days later, the man approached them again. "Look," he said, "I haven't received my retirement checks yet, so I'm not going to be able to give you more than 25 C to bang on the bins. Will that be okay?" "That's it!" the drum leader exclaimed. "If you think we're going to waste our time beating these around for 25 C a day, you're nuts! No way, mister! We quit!" And the man enjoyed peace and serenity for the rest of his days. 11. 2 little boys go into the grocery store. One is 9. One is 4. The 9-year-old grabs a box of tampons from the shelf and carries it to the register for checkout. The cashier asks, "Oh, these must be for your mom, huh?" The 9-year-old replies, "Nope, not for my mom." "Oh, well, they must be for your sister then," says the cashier without thinking. "Nope, not for my sister either," says the boy. The cashier had now become curious. "Oh, not for your mom and not for your sister. Then who are they for?" "They're for my 4-year-old little brother," says the kid calmly. The cashier is surprised. Your little brother? Why? The 9-year-old explains. Well, they say on TV, if you wear one of these, you can do lots of stuff like swim, run real fast, or ride a bike. And my little brother can't do any of those things. 12. 3 professors, a physicist, a chemist, and a statistician are called in to see their dean. Just as they arrive, the dean is called out of his office, leaving the 3 professors there. The professors see with alarm that there is a fire in the wastebasket. The physicist says, "I know what to do. We must cool down the materials until their temperature is lower than the ignition temperature, and then the fire will go out." The chemist says, "No, I know what to do. We must cut off the supply of oxygen so that the fire will go out due to lack of one of the reactants." While the physicist and chemist debate what course to take, they both are alarmed to see the statistician running around the room, starting other fires. They both scream, "What are you doing?" Trying to get an adequate sample size. 13. A wild boar was sharpening his tusks busily against the stump of a tree when a fox happened by. Now the fox was always looking for a chance to make fun of his neighbors. So he made a great show of looking anxiously about, as if in fear of some hidden enemy. But the boar kept right on with his work. "Why are you doing that?" asked the fox at last, with a grin. "There isn't any danger that I can see." "True enough," replied the boar. "But when danger does come, there will not be time for such work as this. My weapons will have to be ready for use then, or I shall suffer for it." Moral: preparedness for war is the best guarantee of peace. 14. A teacher said to her class, "Right, I'm going to hold something under the desk, and I want you to guess what it is. This one is round and red." Little Johnny's hand shot up, but he was ignored. The teacher knew him to be a troublemaker. "It's a plum, miss," said a girl. "No," said the teacher with a smile. "It's an apple, but I like the way you think. The next one is oval-shaped and green." The teacher ignored little Johnny's eagerly raised hand again, as a boy said, "It's an iguana, miss." "No, it's a kiwi, but I like the way you think, Billy." Little Johnny couldn't help himself any more, and said, "I got one, miss. It's stiff, about an inch long, and with a red knob." "Johnny, that's disgusting!" shouted the teacher in anger. "Nah," said little Johnny. "It's a match, but I like the way you think." 15. Back in the 16th century, in a tiny village near Nuremberg, lived a family with 18 children. In order to keep food on the table for his brood, Albrecht Dürer, the elder, the father, and head of the household, was a goldsmith by profession, and worked almost 18 hours a day at his trade and any other paying chore he could find in the neighborhood. Despite the family strain, 2 of Dürer's male children, Albrecht the younger and Albert, had a dream. They both wanted to pursue their talent for art, but they knew that their father would never be financially able to send either of them to Nuremberg to study at the academy there. After many long discussions at night in their crowded bed, the 2 boys finally worked out a pact. They would toss a coin. The loser would go to work in the nearby mines and, with his earnings, support his brother while he attended the academy. Then, in 4 years, when that brother who won the toss completed his studies, he would support the other brother at the academy, either with sales of his artwork or, if necessary, also by laboring in the mines. They tossed a coin on a Sunday morning after church. Albrecht the Younger won the toss and went off to Nuremberg. Albert went down into the dangerous mines and, for the next 4 years, financed his brother, whose work at the academy was almost an immediate sensation. Albrecht's etchings, his woodcuts, and his oils were far better than those of most of his professors, and by the time he graduated, he was beginning to earn considerable fees for his commissioned works. When the young artist returned to his village, the Dürer family held a festive dinner on their lawn to celebrate Albrecht's triumphant homecoming. After a long and memorable meal, punctuated with music and laughter, Albrecht rose from his honored position at the head of the table to drink a toast to his beloved brother for the years of sacrifice that had enabled Albrecht to fulfill his ambition. His closing words were, "And now, Albert, blessed brother of mine, now it is your turn. Now you can go to Nuremberg to pursue your dream, and I will take care of you." All heads turned in eager expectation to the far end of the table where Albert sat, tears streaming down his pale face, shaking his lowered head from side to side while he sobbed and repeated over and over, "No." Finally, Albert rose and wiped the tears from his cheeks. He glanced down the long table at the faces he loved, and then, holding his hands close to his right cheek, he said softly, "No, brother, I cannot go to Nuremberg. It is too late for me. Look what 4 years in the mines have done to my hands. The bones in every finger have been smashed at least once, and lately I have been suffering from arthritis so badly in my right hand that I cannot even hold a glass to return your toast, much less make delicate lines on parchment or canvas with a pen or a brush. No, brother, for me it is too late." More than 450 years have passed. By now, Albrecht Dürer's hundreds of masterful portraits, pen and silver point sketches, watercolors, charcoals, woodcuts, and copper engravings hang in every great museum in the world. But the odds are great that you, like most people, are familiar with Albrecht Dürer's most famous work, hands. Some believe that Albrecht Dürer painstakingly drew his brother's abused hands, with palms together and thin fingers stretched skyward in honor of his brother Albert. He called his powerful drawing simply Hands, but the entire world almost immediately opened their hearts to his great masterpiece and renamed his tribute of love, Hands. 16. The Lamaze class was in full swing. The instructor was teaching the women how to breathe properly and informing the men how to give the necessary assurances at this stage of the plan. "Ladies, exercise is good for you," announced the teacher. "Walking is especially beneficial. And, gentlemen, it wouldn't hurt you to take the time to go walking with your partner." The room was very quiet. Finally, a man in the middle of the group raised his hand. "Yes?" asked the instructor. "Is it all right if she carries a golf bag while we walk?" 17. A little girl walks into a pet shop and asks in the sweetest little lisp, "Excuse me, mister, do you keep whittle wobbits?" And the shopkeeper gets down on his knees so that he's on her level and asks, "Do you want a whittle white wobby or a soft and fewy black wobby, or maybe one like that cute whittle brown wobby over there?" The little girl puts her hands on her knees, leans forward, and says in a quiet voice, "I don't think my python really giveth a thit." 18. A little 12-year-old girl was walking home when a big man on a black motorcycle pulled up beside her. After following along for a while, the rider turns to her and asks, "Hey there, little girl," and winks. "Do you want to go for a ride?" "No," says the little girl as she keeps on walking. The motorcyclist again pulls up beside her and asks, "Come on now, I will give you $10 if you hop on the back." "No," says the little girl again as she hurries down the street. The motorcyclist pulls up beside the little girl again and says, "Okay, last offer. I'll give you $20 and a big bag of candy if you just hop on the back of my bike." Finally, the little girl stops and turns towards him and says pointedly, "Look, Dad, you're the one who bought the Honda. Instead of the Harley, you ride it." 19. 3 youngsters were in the midst of a spirited debate to determine who had the swiftest dad. "My dad is the fastest," Anya exclaimed excitedly. "He's a builder and can chuck a brick off the 5th floor, race down the stairs, and catch it before it even hits the ground." "That's nothing," Brad boasted. "My dad is much faster. He's a professional archer and can target an arrow at a wolf's head, fire it, and then run and grab the creature before the arrow even lands." "Incredible!" exclaimed Tommy. "But I think my father is way faster." "What makes you say that?" asked Anya and Brad curiously. "My father has been working at the DMV for 20 years, Tommy answered. "He's expected to be off work at 5 p.m., but he's so speedy, he's home by 1.